Okay, so we're going to look today at hypothesis test from AP College Board. This was on AP test in 2016. This is your stat sensei, and I hope this helps out a lot with understanding what you might expect. So a polling agency showed the following two statements to a random sample of 1,480 adults in the US. So we have a sample size of 1,048. And then they have two statements. Protection of the environment should be given priority over economic growth. In the economy statement, economic growth should be given priority over protection of the environment. The order in which the statements were shown was randomly selected for each person in the sample. And by the way, the reason I swapped the order is so that it doesn't overinflate one versus the other. All right, kind of removes the bias. So they randomly assigned that. That was actually good of them. After reading the statements, each person was asked to choose the statement that was most consistent with his or her opinion. The results are shown in the table. All right, so we have I prefer the environment statement, 58%. The economy statement, 37%, and 5% said no preference. Assume the conditions for inferences have been met. If you see that, that means you do not have to redo the conditions. You don't have to worry about them. And it says construct and interpret a 95% confidence interval for the proportion of all adults in the US who would have chosen the economy statement. All right, so even though the conditions haven't been met, we still need to define. So let P equal the true population proportion of adults who would have chosen the economy statement. Well, in this case, they said 37% would have chosen it. So we need to find X, and 37 equal P hat equals X over N. So 0.37 equals X over 1,048. So X is 388. And by the way, 0.37 times 1048. It really wasn't 388. But we always round, we need a whole number for our X because we're working with the normal approximation for a binomial. All right. And then if we have, so with that said, let's go ahead and look at our formula, P hat plus or minus Z star, P hat Q hat over N. Please remember this part, everything after the plus or minus is the margin of error. Everything after this part that I'm circling is the standard error. Please don't forget that definitionally. Does not important for this problem, but important for other things. So P hat is 0.37. So this is 0.37, and Q hat, or 1 minus P hat, is 0.63. And our sample size is 1,048. We need to go get our Z star. And as it says off to the side, where you go to do that is second vars, inverse norm, and we wanted to calculate a 95% confidence interval. So 1.96. All right, so, and let's go ahead and run this thing. So stat test, one proportion, Z interval, and that's at letter A. And we didn't really have our X. I want to show you what you can do on the calculator. You just go 0.37 times 1048, and I get a decimal. As soon as I get a decimal, I have to round that. All right, make sure you round it, otherwise it will not work. So there's my interval size, and 0.37 is actually what we came up with. 0.34099 and 0.399946. All right. Not sure what happened there, why I have different values. Let me real quickly check that again. Second vars could be one of my famous typos. So stat, test, letter A, one proportion, Z interval. And we have 388. I like that. We have a sample size of 1,048. I like that. And we have the correct confidence level at 95%. And for whatever reason, this doesn't exactly match. I have 0.399. Okay. So we are 95% confident that the true population proportion of adults who have chosen the economy lies within this interval. You know, they didn't ask me to make this statement, so I didn't. And by the way, when they say construct a confidence interval, you have to show all this work and you have to explain it in context, even if they don't ask you for it. All right. But I'm going to tell you that because it's both positive, this is statistically significant. All right. Because it's positive, we are pretty positive, because both values are positive. It's like more people prefer the economy statement over the environment statement. Anyway, the condition is necessary to ensure. So the next thing, B, one of the conditions for inference was that it met a number, that the number who chose the economy statement and the number who did not choose the economy statement are both greater than 10. Explain why it is necessary to have that condition. So basically they're saying explain why NP and NQ have to be greater than or equal to 10. Well, that's our normality condition. And the condition is necessary to ensure that the sample is large enough to use the normal approximation for the binomial. Because remember, technically when we're working with percents or proportions, we're really working with a binomial. But if our sample size is large enough, NP and Q greater than 10, we can use the normal approximation. All right. The next thing, a suggestion was made to use a two-sample Z interval for a difference between proportions to investigate whether the difference in proportions between the adults would have who would have chosen the environment statement and the adults in the United States who would have chosen the economy statement is statistically significant. Is a two-sample Z interval for a difference between proportions appropriate? Justify your answer. Well, that's a really good question. Is the two-sample Z interval for a difference in proportions justifiable? Well, how many samples did I take? I only took one. Because I only took one, it's not. So a two-sample procedure is not appropriate because the data was collected from a single sample, right? We would have to have two independent samples in order to do a two-sample. By the way, people sit there and go, hey, a proportion is not accepted because we need a Bernoulli, we needed a yes, no. And basically they asked about the economy, and we are confident that the economy statement, it's either they chose the economy or they didn't choose the economy. So either they chose this or they chose something else. But because of that, we're good to go. It's still a yes, no. Either they chose it or they didn't, so you still can use the proportion. And we're confident that it lies within this interval, okay? We're confident that it lies within this interval, which means it's less than half, all right? Less than half the people would have chosen the economy statement, and it appears that more than half would have chosen the environment statement. All right, appreciate you watching. Hope this is helpful, and we'll see you in the next unit. Thank you.